Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Scraps and Locos of Britain. Each week we'll take a look at a class of locomotives that didn't make it into preservation. All of these classes will be standard gauge and owned by either a pre-grouping railway company, one of the big four railway companies, and or British Railways. While some classes will get a new build member, most of these classes will be scrapped and likely remain scrapped. Here we go. Our next episode is on the London, Brighton, and South Coast Railway K-Class 260 Moguls. Unlike most railways, London, Brighton, and South Coast Railway made most of its income from passenger traffic rather than freight traffic. The freight locomotives that they had to be quick in order to accelerate away from green signals and out of sidings. They also had to maintain a good turn of speed to reach their next destination and allow passenger trains to run safely and on time. During the early 1900s, the LB&SCR's primary freight locomotives were Robert Billington's C2 class 060s of 1893. However, by 1905, these were starting to struggle with the increasing traffic demands being placed upon them. To solve this, Douglas Marsh rebuilt 29 of them with larger 170 psi boilers and reclassified them as C2X in 1908. However, by 1913, even these were starting to struggle when it came to keeping to time. It wasn't uncommon to see the C2Xs double heading on freight trains. This practice was disliked by many railways, including the LB&SCR, as it resulted in higher fuel and maintenance costs for the locomotives and the crew's wages. As well as freight traffic, passenger traffic was also growing rapidly, especially during the summer months. The LB&SCR's superintendent, Lawson Billinton, son of Robert Billinton, realized the need for a mixed traffic engine and designed a Mogul with a Belpaire firebox and a Robinson superheater, all three being firsts for the LB&SCR. The design was classified as the K-Class. The K-Class had 5'6" driving wheels, a 170 pounds per square inch parallel boiler, two 21 by 26 inch outside cylinders with Stephenson link motion, a tractive effort of 25,104 pounds. The first member, number 337, emerged from Brighton Works in September 1913. She was followed by number 338 that December. Both were allocated to Brighton for evaluation and initially painted in this red oxide livery before being repainted into photographic gray before finally adopting London, Brighton, and South Coast goods engine black. After a few modifications to the springing on the lead pony truck and a few modifications to the layout of the smoke box, a further 3 locomotives were built at Brighton Works between March and September 1914, numbered 339 to 341. These also had slightly larger smoke boxes than the 2 prototypes. Like the Furness Railway D5s mentioned on this list, production was halted due to the First World War. The government did allow the LB&SCR to build 5 more Ks in 1916. These were numbered 342 to 346. The final 2 members of this batch, numbered 345 and 346, had a second dome in front of the actual steam dome. This second dome was actually a top bead. The remaining members of this class later rebuilt with a top feed whenever they became due for their next general repair. During the war, the The K's hauled supply trains, troop trains, and ammunition trains from the marshalling yard at Three Bridges to the ports of New Haven and Littlehampton. As many as 60 trains a day ran between Three Bridges and these two ports, with some weighing up to 1,000 tons. The K's could haul these trains at up to 35 miles an hour. To accommodate for the class's length at 57 feet 10 inches, 60-foot turntables were installed at Brighton Works and New Haven in 1917. After the war, the K's were employed on the LB&SCR's main freight trains and on the New Haven boat trains alongside Marsh's H1 and H2 Atlantics, as well as on passenger trains during the busy summer weekends. Then, in 1919, government control of Britain's railways ceased, which allowed the LB&SCR to build more locomotives. The following year, 4 more K-class locomotives were built at Brighton, numbered 347 to 350. The LB&SCR discontinued their black livery and instead switched to umber. That same year, the final 3 members, numbered 351 to 353, were outshopped from Brighton Works. A plan was drawn up for a 262 tank engine based on the K's, but this was turned down. There were also plans for 3 more K's to be built, but following the groupings of 1923, this was abandoned. Some of the K's were used as test beds for a few experiments. These were meant to improve efficiency, but none of these were deemed successful. In 1921, number 351 was fitted with an extended smoke box to test a Lewis draft appliance. This was later removed in 1927. In 1922, numbers 341 and 342 were experimentally fitted with an early type of keel chap exhaust. In 1922, number 343 had a Worthington feedwater heater, which was removed the following year. Further experiments were continued after the groupings of 1923. The K's were renumbered B337 to B353, the B signifying that it was of a Brighton design. In 1924, the K's were tried against the S15 460s from the London and Southwestern Railway, and Richard Maunsell's N-class moguls from the Southeastern and Chatham Railway. The results were that the K's were more expensive to maintain, but required less maintenance. The K's also proved to be the least powerful of the 3 designs, resulting in more N's and S15s being built, both with a few modifications by Maunsell, but no more K's. Initially allocated to the central section, the K's were later rebuilt with shorter chimneys and cabs as well as flatter domes between 1929 and 1939. Despite this modification, the K's never really fit in on any of the other 2 sections. Also during the 1930s, the K's had their top bead removed, presumably to lower the maintenance costs. I couldn't find any information on when exactly the top beads were removed, but my guess is either 1920s or 1930s, mainly judging by the pictures I've found online. Locomotives with the B numbering, i.e. Brighton locomotive designs, were renumbered from B to having 2000 added to their road numbers. The K's were displaced from passenger trains when the Brighton main line was electrified. This left the K's to work mainly as freight locomotives, although they did haul passenger trains during the busy summer months. During the Second World War, the K's worked alongside Bulliard's Q1 060s on heavy wartime freights, as well as hauling troop trains prior to D-Day. In 1941, number 2342 was fitted with electric lighting. This made her the first British steam locomotive to be fitted with this device after Merchant Navy Pacific number 21C1 channel packet. The electric lighting was removed 10 years later. All 17 members made it into British Railways days, being renumbered S2337 to S2353. The S signified that this was a southern design. However, this was later replaced with the addition of 30,000 to the road number. In this case, the Ks were renumbered 32337 to 32353. During their BR careers, the Ks worked alongside the bullied Q1s and were also popular for rail tours during the 1950s and 1960s. The late 1950s also saw the Ks being rostered onto more frequent passenger duties. In April 1958, number 32424 Beachy Head held a farewell tour from Brighton to Eastleigh before being withdrawn and scrapped a month later. Following the withdrawal of the Marsh Atlantics, some of the Ks were reallocated to Brighton for use on the New Haven boat trains. During the late 1950s and early 1960s, the K class was split, with the first 8 members being allocated to Brighton, and the last 9 members being allocated to 3 bridges. Despite their age, the Ks could still do whatever task was given to them. However, the Ks could not outrun the end of steam on British Railways. By 1962, steam locomotives from all regions were being withdrawn left, right, and center. To keep in line with the southern region's steam withdrawal program, British Rail decided that it would be a good idea to withdraw the Ks for bookkeeping reasons instead of operational reasons. The first withdrawals of the class were numbers 32339 from Brighton and 32348 from Three Bridges on the 10th of November 1962. The final 4 members to go were numbers 32338, 32341, and 32342 from Brighton, as well as number 32353 from Three Bridges on the 30th of December. Most were placed into storage at Hove in East Sussex, but at least one was brought back to rescue trains that were stranded during the Great Freeze of 1962 and 63. The Bluebell Railway did intend to purchase a K. However, they couldn't afford to do so because the money they had needed to go into purchasing the line from British Rail. Meanwhile, the Ks held on until 1964, when the last member, number 32343, was cut up at A. King & Sons Limited in Norwich on the 31st of October. None of the Ks survived into preservation. This series was inspired by locomotives of Great Britain by Rail, Air, Land and Sea. A link to his channel is in the description below. If you have any thoughts on this video, or suggestions for a future episode, then feel free to let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I shall see you next week when I discuss Churchward's Night Owls. Take care, everyone.